Hi, this is Chris Brown from CIT 381, and I would like to help you understand how to get started with R. What is R? R is a programming language that was developed specifically for statistical computing and graphics. It's an implementation of the S programming language, which was developed at Bell Labs in 1976. R is used for data analysis, data mining, predictive modeling, and developing statistical software. R uses a command line interface, but like most computing programming languages, several graphical integrated development environments are available. So the first step is you need to get the tools. Well, what tools do we need to get? At a minimum, you need to get R. That's the programming language. And you can do that by going to the links that I show here on the screen. The second link will take you directly to the page where you can start your download. Now, R is available for Linux, Mac, and Windows machines, so it shouldn't be a problem for you to get it. Now, to make learning R easier and to be more efficient in working with R, I highly recommend getting RStudio, which is also an open source tool. It's an integrated development environment. Now, many of you may have some previous programming experience, and you probably started out by creating a simple Hello World program, oftentimes by using a simple text editor like Notepad. And I'm betting that as you progressed in that programming class that you soon learned that using an integrated development environment like NetBeans, Eclipse, or IntelliJ IDEA makes coding so much easier. RStudio is an open source IDE for R, and you will notice as you start to learn more about R that it's widely used. However, there are a couple of others that you could consider. RedR or Rattle are other IDEs that will work with R, specifically for R. Now, how can I get RStudio? Well, just go to the link that I show at the top of the screen here. And like R, it's available for Linux, Mac, and Windows. It gives you several options. You can get it in a desktop or server version, and you can get the open source free version, or if you're doing this work commercially, you can get a commercial license that also provides support. To get started learning R, though, you probably want the open source desktop version. Well, what's the next step? The next step is you got to get some data. It all starts with the data. To start learning R, you'll need data. In R, you import the data, you explore the data, you build a data model, and you visualize the data. That's what R is all about. Now, there are lots of freely available data sets for this very purpose of practicing on small, well-understood data sets, and I list just a few that you can go to get data sets. There's many, many, many more. And even R, when you download and install R, R comes with its own data sets library that is meant for this same purpose of learning and practicing. And we'll learn a little bit more about libraries in a minute. Don't worry about that term. Now, you can learn about these data sets by typing in the command at the R command prompt, library help equal data sets. And that will bring up some documentation that will kind of tell you what data sets are available in that default data set library that's provided with R. Now, using one of those data sets is really easy. So for learning and exploring R, it's hard to not recommend using one of those readily accessible data sets. It's super easy. You just load one of those data sets by inputting the command at the command prompt, data, and then the data set name that you want to load. So for example, data iris will load the iris data set. Now, if you're interested in a different data set that you maybe have found at one of those other links, you can install a different data set library by using the install.library and then the library name command. Once that's been installed, then you load the library using the library function, and then you can use that same command to library help equal to learn what's in what data sets are in that library, and then you can start using the selected data set by using the data and then the data set name function. So it's really easy to get started with some of that practice data. Well, what do you do once you've got your data? You've got to get some training. As great as R is and as powerful as it is, really to get an idea of kind of where to get started, how to go after it, you need some training. Now the great news is that R training materials are just abundant. You can find them everywhere. There's lots of freely available tutorials on both R and RStudio. You can use online learning platforms like Codecademy, CodeSchool, DataCamp, Udemy, etc. Some of those courses are free, others require a paid subscription. And my recommendation is that you would use the free ones to begin with. So for example, CodeSchool has one called Try R, and it's a fairly basic, fairly simple tutorial, and you can get through it pretty quickly. It will give you the basics of what you need to get started. Also, there are loads and loads and loads of YouTube videos, and they span everything from basic quick and dirty 15 to 20 minute tutorials just showing you exactly step by step how to explore a basic data set to multiple hour-long or longer videos in a series, which I've given an example here of a gentleman that is pretty good, and he put together a series of 6 YouTube videos. Now, it's going to take a time commitment to get through those because each one of those is at least an hour long, but they're really good. You can look for online articles or webinars. I list a couple of examples that I went through as I was learning R, and then obviously books. So you can get those either online in some instances or the printed version. I recommend beginning R, getting started with RStudio, hands-on programming with R. R for data science is a much deeper topic, and I would probably reserve that for once you've gotten comfortable with R and really want to take a deeper dive. And then another one along that same line is called Learning Predictive Analytics with R. So once you've gotten through some of that training, you're ready to let the fun begin, to start coding. I want to show you just a few basics in terms of coding in R. As you go through training, you'll probably learn these 3 basic things. The first is data frame. So the basic data structure in R for containing a data set is called a data frame. And that's a very foundational basic thing that you'll need to learn about in order to work with data. Second foundational thing is packages and libraries. Packages are collections of functions, data, and compiled code that extend the available functionality in R. And I provide some links there where you can learn more about that. It's a little bit confusing because you'll hear the word packages and the word libraries used somewhat interchangeably, and they are closely associated. They're not exactly the same, but basically what you need to know is that you load packages in R with the library function, which we kind of saw an example of that a few screens back. And again, if you want to learn more, I've provided a link there about the differences between libraries and packages. And there's some basics in RStudio that you'll want to know. So RStudio provides a console. This is where you would basically access the command line interface for R. They provide a source editor that you can use to write R scripts. There's a workspace area that you can use to view objects in the global environment. There's a data viewer that's very helpful as you start to load in data, where you can kind of see what that data set looks like. There's command history that's useful to search or view or cut and paste from previous commands. And then what's really super useful is the viewer panes, starting with the plots pane. You can use that to see the visual results from your commands against your data set. Also, the package manager is in that same area, and that's really useful because you will want to perhaps see what packages are installed, install new packages, maybe you need to update existing packages. All that can be done through that package manager. And then the help viewer. Obviously, as you're learning R, this is a super critical piece. You'll use that to view documentation on libraries, functions, etc. And again, I provided a link if you want to learn more about those basic things. Explore those at a lower level of depth. So this is just sort of a visual of what I'm talking about. So in the upper left quadrant is where the source editor and the data viewer will appear by default. In the upper right quadrant is where the workspace and command history will appear. The viewers are all in the lower right-hand quadrant. So the one that's currently displayed in that screenshot is the plots viewer, but you can access files, file viewer, packages, your help viewer, all those kinds of things. And then you'll use the console, which is the one in the lower left quadrant there. And that's basically the command line interface. Another really important thing to understand about RStudio is that it does include an import function that's available from the file menu, and it really makes importing data sets from CSV, Excel, or other common file formats really super easy. And I show a screen clip on the right hand side of just a simple Excel file that I imported that has S&P 500 stock pricing records. Well, so you're in RStudio, you're trying to do some code, you've gone through some tutorials, you're starting to get comfortable. What do you do if you're trying to use a function and it gives you an error message, or the results that you're getting are not what you expect? Well, you'll want to get some help. How do I do that? You can do it a couple of ways. If you're using the R command line, you would use the question mark followed by the function that you want help on. Hit enter and it will bring up all the help information about that particular function. If you're in RStudio, you can use that as well, the command line method. But the one that I recommend is you use the help viewer, because it just has a little search box. And so you can enter the function, or it just could be some topic, and it will bring up documentation on that topic or that function. And at the end of the day, if that doesn't get you what you need, remember, Google is your friend, and there is just tons and tons of information on the internet about R. It's one of the wonderful things about it. Well, the basic steps to analyze your data in R: you prepare your data set, you explore your data, you model your data, and oftentimes that's an iterative process. So you might get to the model step and discover, maybe I need to explore this piece a little bit more, and so that means you need to go back and change something in your data set and then look at it in Explore mode again and continue to build out your model. It's no different than what we've been doing in Excel in CIT 381 so far this year. Those modeling efforts have been iterative. And then once you feel like you've built a pretty solid model, then you can start to visualize that data in a way that will help explain it to other folks. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about here with these basic steps. You should expect to spend the majority of your time really in that preparing your data set cycle. As you're learning it and as you're using those practice data sets, you won't have to do much of that. And that's the intent of those, is that the data is, small, it's pretty clean, and allows you to explore more about R than about the data. But as you get into your own data sets, you'll want to expect to spend the majority of your time really working with that data. Now, once you've got your model built and you have a fairly high degree of confidence in it, then you'll want to really visualize that data. Now, you can visualize your data as you're exploring it. That's actually super helpful. But just understand that there's a difference between that exploratory visualization and what I call explanatory visualization. So exploratory, that's to help you see patterns in the data, find high value features in the data set, and help you as you're modeling your data. Chances are, by the time you get to that step 3 and again feel confident in the model that you've built, you're going to be pretty intimately familiar with that data set. And the caution here is that just because you've spent so much time in it and you feel like you have a pretty good understanding of it, that's not going to translate necessarily to someone who isn't familiar with the data, that may need to basically review the conclusions that you've reached from that data. And that's where the explanatory visualizations come in. And so you'll need to be familiar with different types of visualizations and choose those at the end of the process here that will really help others who aren't as familiar with the data to really get a good grasp for what those conclusions are that you've gotten from the data. Well, that's basically it. Thanks for viewing, but I just want to leave you with this conclusion. R is a very powerful tool for data science. And try it. You will love it.